Today I've got Simon Benn, the children's happiness expert, with me today. Um, I met him online. I think this is how we meet lots of people nowadays. We don't, because of lockdown and this wretched virus, we've not been meeting people face to face so much. But I love the fact that I meet so many fascinating people with the fact that we can do it. The internet has really brought us together, hasn't it? We can meet people from all over the world. Although he doesn't live the other end of the world, he lives the other end of the country. But yeah. And so, Simon, I'd love you to introduce yourself.
Yeah, sure. You just tickled me, Wendy, there when you said, well, we met online. I just want to assure the listeners that it wasn't a dating site. It was a group, a Facebook group for coaches. So yeah, I'm Simon Benn, the children's happiness expert, Wendy, and I'm delighted to be here. I love your show. I love your energy. I love your warmth, and I'm looking forward to a great conversation. So yeah, thank you for having me on. Brilliant.
Mm-hmm. So I think we were talking so much. We're talking just a bit earlier. We talked several times now, but we're talking about bullying and how it affects children so badly, but it also has such an impact on the whole family.
Yeah, I think from the bully all too often moves from the playground to in our heads. So the central challenge that most of us have, most adults have, I think, is that we don't think that we are good enough. And I think that often has been exacerbated by the bullying. So the negative voice in our head, the inner critic, the ego, whatever you want to call it, that's not who we are. But it's constantly carping in our heads, telling us that we are not a good enough children's happiness expert, not a good enough dad, not a good enough mum, not a good enough brother, sister, son, daughter, businessman, nurse, whatever. We all have different flavors, but the central theme is that we're not good enough, and we weren't born with that voice. We picked it up along the way somewhere. We went to school and we started comparing ourselves to others. We compare ourselves to others on social media. So for me, the most inspiring part of what I do is when I help a child, or I help a mum help his or her child. Sorry, I help a mum help her child, or help a dad help his child to see their perfection, and to see that they are way more than the bully tells them they are. And I get a tingle whenever I hear a story from that, or whenever I hear feedback from that. So yeah, I'm not a parenting expert that tells people what to do. I'm not a children's counsellor who has been trained as a psychotherapist or anything like that. I'm just a guy who's gone through some ups and downs, learned a lot, and figured a way to make kids bully-proof. So a lot of my work has been done in schools, And a third of the kids will tell me after a 40-minute workshop, of which only 5 minutes has been anything related to bullying whatsoever, that the other kids can't upset them anymore. They've had that realization. They've had that sight from within, that insight. They've had that jump in their self-worth, their self-esteem, their level of consciousness. It all comes down to, whatever we call it, all comes down to the same thing, that they realize that what that bully says to them isn't true. And that bully can't upset them anymore. And if the bully can't upset them anymore, then the bully stops bullying them, because bullies are looking for a reaction. And when I say this to people, they often think that it's too good to be true. But here's the thing: there's a continuum, there's a scale to which what other people says influences, and at the end of the opposite, at the two ends of that scale, there are groups. So there are groups of us who are impacted by bullies, and then there's the group of kids that aren't impacted by bullies. They just laugh it off. So all I do is help the kids move from the impacted group into the non-impacted group through an insight about who they are and the truth of what other people tell them.
Yeah. And that, I think we're so susceptible to that, being bullied, but also finding a way, our way in the world, aren't we? We're finding a way. And I think kids, although kids could be really unkind to each other, they will find something, whether it's ginger hair, buck teeth, whether it's, I don't know, freckles, whether it's you're the shortest, the tallest, the biggest, whatever it is, there will be something that will give you a label or something. And I think it's teasing, but teasing then leads to bullying, which I think is I don't like teasing either, unless it's that thing, isn't it? When people tease you and then they say, oh, you can't take a joke when you get upset. But actually it's only fun if both sides are enjoying it. And I think from children to adults.
Yeah. Fun is a key word here, because for me, kids learn more when they're having fun. They learn more about themselves. They learn more about their thoughts and their feelings. So my stuff is fun. It's not therapy. Somebody looked somebody's a new friend that I met is another one online, not another one that wasn't on a dating site, because I'm a happily married guy. We've been married a long time. She said, oh, your website's not clinical. Well, I don't want it to be clinical. It's not clinical colours. Well, I don't want it to be clinical. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a counsellor that's going to ask or tell a mum to ask her 9-year-old daughter, tell me about your childhood. This isn't what this is about. This is about a fun way to realise where our feelings really come from, and our feelings, they only ever come from inside us. And when we realise that, as in when in the moment, not when as in once and forever. It's not an absolute when. When we see in the moment that our feelings are only coming from our thoughts, we realize that the bully outside us can't make us think anything, because feelings are inside job, and feelings come from thoughts. That's the only place they ever come from. So helping kids see that by distracting them with fun. We were talking before we started recording, you were talking about art therapy and play therapy and stuff like that. I guess my stuff is more like that. My process is more like that. It's empowering the child to understand where the feelings are coming from. But we're all brought up on the idea that the outside world determines the way that we feel. And that is not the truth, because the thought of going on an airline, on an airplane at this moment probably would fill everybody with a sense of fear. And happy, whereas looking forward to lockdown continuing to ease makes us feel happy. So our thoughts, and we have 70,000 of them a day, are in a constant state of flux. But it's a very compelling illusion that the outside world, that the traffic jam, that the fact for me that the swimming pool isn't open is frustrating. But our feelings are only ever coming from our thoughts. So no, bullies can't actually upset us because our feelings only ever come from thoughts. But it's a compelling illusion, and I keep falling for it too, but I fall for it less than I used to do.
So if it's just a thought, what makes it real for that child?
Well, it's a bit like putting a tea bag in water. You know how the tea bag fills the color from the tea bag fills, it colors the water and makes us a cup of tea. So so our awareness, our senses, ourselves, I don't know, it takes the thought and makes it real. Yeah.
And from a kind of neuroscience kind of side, we do pick up the negatives far more readily than the positives. That is, that research tells us that. So we are going to listen and accept those things. It's easier, not more comfortable in a comfortable way, but it's more acceptable to our brain to accept the negatives.
Yeah.
We keep hearing those. We pick them up from school, don't we? You just get. I remember being told by, my belief was that the art teacher believed I couldn't draw or paint or do anything. And I believed that. That school only focused on the bright kids. So if you weren't in the top quadrant, then they just didn't bother with you. I wasn't. I never got taught to draw or paint. We were never given the techniques on how to do it. And I believed it. Years, I'm useless, I can't do it. So it doesn't even have to be real words, it can be just implicit rather than explicit. And I think I believed that for years until 10, 15 years ago, something like that. I decided, I'm going to see if I can learn how to draw and paint. And I went to an art class. I would never be an amazing painter or artist, but I can occasionally turn out a really good picture, and I love it because it's a real distraction for me. But I can do it.
Yeah.
And I think this is it. We get programmed, or that one word, you're useless, you're pathetic, you're stupid. It can be just that one tiny word that somebody says, and we swallow it whole. And then we believe that we're stupid, we're useless, we're no good at it. Yeah.
The answer to all these questions isn't in our thoughts, it's in who we truly are. So the analogy, the metaphor that I use with the kids, and that I showed the parents to use with their kids, is the juicer. So it's based on the truth that our feelings come from our thoughts. And like juice comes from fruit. So the kids are playing about putting positive pomegranates in and swapping out sad strawberries for smiley strawberries, and you see the smile comes on your face, and then there's and the juice has got the lid, and the lid protects us from bullies, and so that it's that's the approach, and then so we go in. That's the starting point. But there's a more profound part to that. The fact is that we are not the juicy feelings that come out of our heart. We are not the fruity thoughts that go into our head. We are the juicer. So the juicer comes gift wrapped from Amazon, in a cardboard box. We open it up, and it's got a clear wrap, a clear polythene around it, because Amazon aren't as eco-friendly as they reckon they are. And underneath that we have is this juicer, this perfect shiny metal object that is who we are, and it is pristine, it is brand new, it is gleaming, and it's like a newborn baby. There's no thoughts in that baby's head. There's no fruit in that juicer. The baby is pretty okay, apart from when they're tired, when they need changing, and when they're hungry. So we're not our thoughts. The answer to life isn't to be found in our thoughts. The answer is in who we truly are. That perfection, that part that can't be touched by the thoughts that we have. The most life-changing moments for me is when I've realized that the stuff in my head isn't true. Like it was for you. You realize the stuff in your head, just lightening it up a bit and bringing it perhaps a little bit more superficial for a minute. But when you realize that you could draw and paint. So you had an experience of that. You had a thought that said, or a belief, whatever you want to call it. A belief is just a collection of thoughts. You had a thought or a belief that said that you couldn't do it. I've got the same one about DIY, okay? Because Mike Brown finished my woodworking stool in school when I was about 12. And, the other day, my wife says to me, you're going to put some shelves up or something. And I really didn't want to do it. Now, so I have my blank spots, so it's not how I would choose to spend my time. But when we experience that as not the truth, if I really wanted to get into DIY, I could do it. I don't want to. It's not how I choose. I'd rather spend my time having conversations like this and inspiring parents and inspiring kids, rather than learning how to do DIY. But the most insightful moments we have are when we realize the thoughts in our head are rubbish. We stop believing that place. And there's all sorts of people out there who are telling us that they should replace a positive thought, a negative thought, with a positive one. I find that kids find that very easy to do with positive pomegranates and negative nectarines, but as adults we find it a little bit trickier. The only way through for me is seeing the lies, that the inner critic, the bully in our head, is a liar, and liars tell lies. When we see through the lies, that's when we change. But we live in a world where it's 10 ways to do this, 15 ways to do that, 17 ways to do this. The world is obsessed with strategies, but strategies don't work unless they've been preceded by a big or little insight about who we truly are.
Yeah, it's really, yes, it's challenging those thoughts, isn't it? And how true are they? Where did that thought come from? Where did that belief, if we put it in belief, or where did it come from? And so how, if we've got nothing to prove that, which I didn't have anything to prove that I couldn't draw or paint, apart from the fact I didn't know how to go about it. And I think there's that, isn't it? Well, what makes you believe that you can't do that? What makes you believe that you're not good enough? What makes you believe, that you can't do something?
That's to me, that's that can be a rabbit hole, and I disappear down that rabbit hole a lot. I don't find the rabbit hole particularly enlightening. I don't normally find my solutions down rabbit holes. But I still fall for that quite a lot. I was listening to a guy talking about this sort of stuff on the driving down the M1 one Saturday morning, and he was talking about himself having an insight into it was an American guy. So he used a word that we wouldn't really use in the UK. But to call it, to do it politely, we'll just say rubbish or manure. Let's call it manure, right? So he was explaining to me. He was explaining the story of how seeing the stuff in his head is manure. Or he had to, whilst driving, he had to pull over on the hard shoulder because he was laughing so much at the fact that he'd seen this manure as truth. And I had to do the same thing. And
I suppose, yeah, I'm taking it from a point of view, what evidence have I got that is true? So in other words, if I say I can't draw, but taking that as an example, where's the evidence? I don't have any evidence. And if somebody were to say, if I were to ask somebody and say, well, I can't draw, how would they believe me? It's not going deeper and deeper. It's where's the concrete evidence to prove that I am stupid? Where's the concrete evidence that I can't do something?
So,
it's more about that. And that is kind of CBT based. And I don't use that all the time. But where's the proof? Where's the proof that you can say, well, yeah, but I'm stupid. Well, where's the proof? Show me the proof. And if you can't prove it 100%, then come on. And it is about negative.
So it's whatever works. It's whatever works for us, for the thought, for the belief, for the challenge, what we're doing. So whatever helps us to get to the point where we realize it isn't true. So I love your approach. Where's the evidence? There isn't any evidence, so therefore it isn't true. Bingo. It's whatever leads us to that insight. So I had listening to somebody telling his story made me realize how silly the story in my head was. It's whatever works.
Yeah.
Whatever works. So some people do meditation to become quiet. I don't do meditation to become quiet, but I do walk my dog and I do go swimming, and it gets us to that. It's whatever gets to that calmer space.
I agree, and I think that is just an approach, and I suppose I was challenging you to some degree when you said, well, you don't agree with that approach, and you go down a rabbit hole. And I said, well, yeah, I'm not. What makes you think that? It isn't on that level. It just is. I suppose I was putting forward the other side of it, But actually, if you haven't got the proof, how can you believe that it's true?
Yeah.
And I think we are coming from
I like it.
To a point. But
there's no one approach.
No, there isn't. There's no one approach. I think whatever works for anybody, and it has to come from within us anyway. We can be told till we're blue in the face, well, of course, you're not stupid, or you can draw. But unless we believe that ourselves, no amount of telling us it make a difference.
That is so true, and that's so. It's not what somebody says; it's what we hear. It's not what somebody points at. It's what we see, because change is an inside job, and change drives everything. But we're also impatient for change. We're looking to kind of fast track the change. Well, and there's this societal myth that change takes a long time. Well, it always happens in an instant. It happens in an instant when we have that insight, when something changes for us. It may take so the bus may take a long time to arrive, but it always pulls up in the last 20 seconds. It's there. And that's good. But where the metaphor falls down is there's no timetable. Even British buses that don't run to timetable have a timetable, but there's no timetable. There's no timetable for change. But it helps if we hang around at the bus stop. We're more likely to have the change. And I guess that's what people come to your podcast for.
I love that analogy of the bus stop and the bus, because I think if we're not prepared to stand and wait for the bus, or we're not prepared to get on the bus, then it doesn't matter what we do. We're never going to be able to change that. Yeah, it's a lot there, isn't there? And it is all about what we believe and our fears and concerns. And I think one thing I would say that we are only born with two fears: the fear of falling and the fear of loud noises. Everything else is conditional. And I think that's it. So we get that the words or the beliefs or whatever it is that fills our heads when we're children, we end up not, having those fears and therefore we don't have the confidence to be able to stand up and say, I don't need to be bullied. It's not real.
Yeah. It's not real.
No, it's not real. Not the way we it's what we believe, isn't it, or what we accept, or how we build that inner confidence and say, I have that confidence and I don't need to take on that being bullied. As you say, that it's that juicer, that protective shield around us.
But it's the truth. So the feelings only ever come from the thoughts.
Yeah.
But it's a very compelling, as one of my mentors says, a very compelling illusion. It looks like the slow coach in front of me on the country lane, or the bikers, it's so many people cycling. It looks like they are making me frustrated and impatient. It looks like that until it doesn't look like that.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's in the moment. Yeah,
that's a fascinating conversation. It's always interesting to hear other people's viewpoints. I love that, and different ways of looking at things. So just tell me, Simon, what is one thing that the listeners can take away with themselves that they can put into action right this minute?
So I would say the communication bit. So you talked about the fact that we have to see things for ourselves. So we're all trying to influence people to, we're trying to influence our kids for their better, for their good. And we're trying to get people to see things differently. And the way to do that is actually through questions. So I used to do a lot on the sales side. So I heard many years ago that telling ain't selling. So what I mean by that is something with an exclamation mark on it. You know, you are a good child. You are a good mother. You are a good whatever, with an exclamation mark, right? That doesn't work. A question mark, so a sentence ends in a question mark. The question mark has the hook, and questions draw new questions, draw new answers out of anybody that we're having a conversation with. So that would be my tip. If you're looking to influence somebody for the better, would be to think about a better question to ask, because they are not. If you try and force a new piece of information into somebody's head, then the barriers are going to go up, and they're not going to listen. And what we need to do is to use a question to draw the answer out of the other person, but if that's their child. And it comes I did a year's Latin. Oh, we made that Latin teacher's life hell. When I was about 10 or 11, we did a year's Latin, right? I don't know how to tell you that, but so the source of the word educate is the Latin educare, right? Which is to draw out of somebody. But we have this idea that education is a sausage factory where we try and shove stuff into kids, but they don't learn because they don't see the point, and we don't change when people are trying to shove information into our heads. That's why we don't like being sold to, because here he is, this stereotypical car salesman, recruitment consultant, PPI salesman, whatever they are. They're trying to shove information into our heads, and our blinkers go up and we don't listen.
Yeah.
So my tip would be to to use questions rather than statements to help somebody change. Great insight there.
So I've really enjoyed talking to you today. It's been really interesting. So how can people easily get in touch with you? I will put all your details in show notes, and they can listen to you and watch you. You'll be on YouTube. You'll be in this episode will be on Spotify and on all my social. You can find it wherever you listen to your social media. Your podcast, I should say, as well as on my podcast page, which is Love, Listen, Talk, Repeat. How can people easily find you, Simon?
The easiest way is my website, which is Simon Benn with 2 N's .co.uk.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for today.
Thank you. And I've had a fantastic time talking to you. As you mentioned the YouTube, I realized that my eye has not been on the camera all the way through this through this chat. So for people watching on YouTube, you're going to think, why is he suddenly staring at the camera? Well, that's just because I forgot. I forgot we were on there. We were doing the YouTube.
I'm sure people won't. It's more about what they hear, isn't it?
It's what they hear. Yeah, it is. It's not about what we say. It's what the audience hears. So yeah, I hope they have heard something useful today.